Hey, it's Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and this is Cameron's custom Solos Hold Starkiller. Just finished this guy up, and it was not a super complicated build, but very much enjoyable because it's not all the time that you get to work on a hilt that is as beautifully made as this one is. I have a couple small quibbles with it, but for the most part it's gorgeous, and it's what you'd expect from Solos Hold. You know, they sell premium, super high-end, you know, maker quality hilts as opposed to mass-produced stuff. I'm not sure where it's made, but it may well be made in the US. I think the price tag on this guy is $1,300 for the empty hilt, so that gives you some indication of the level of quality. But as far as Starkiller hilts go, this is the nicest one I've ever seen, and certainly the nicest one I've had the opportunity to build. This thing weighs a solid 4 pounds. I mean, this is a significantly heavy lightsaber, and that's, you know, even before you add the electronics in the chassis. The main reason for that is because this section here is predominantly, it's either steel or iron. I mean, you could hear it. Just unscrewing that, you can hear the sound of it. That's not what aluminum sounds like. So this whole thing is basically either steel or iron with aluminum inserts here, these fins, this round ring, and then some copper inserts here, and a copper, aluminum cover tech. But, you know, predominantly steel or iron, and nicely machined, very nicely machined. The only part that I had to touch up was the pommel. This was a little bit rough, so I just put that on my lathe and turned it flat. But other than that, the machine job on this is gorgeous. Might as well get to the negative that I found and get it out of the way. The only negative that I have found with this guy, as far as the quality goes, is the fact that this is steel or iron, and so it's subject to rust. And it will rust just based on the amount of moisture in the air. You don't actually have to get it wet. And the reason I say that is because I've had this hilt out and on my bench for 2 or 3 weeks, and in that period of time the pommel started to get noticeably rusty, and so did the bottom piece here. So I just touched it up with a little bit of 800 sandpaper, just clean it off. Not a huge deal, but Cameron, you're going to want to wipe this down with maybe some WD-40 or some 3-in-1 on a rag, and just touch it up occasionally here and there to keep it from getting oxidized or rust spots at all, because it will happen. Same with the copper. It's just bare copper. There's no coating on it at all. So this is going to, it's going to discolor and it's going to oxidize. If you just hold it in your hand and your hand gets a little wet and the moisture gets on the copper, you're going to see a distinct line. That's not a big deal. You can take some rubbing alcohol and wipe it off, and if that doesn't work, you could just very lightly sand it with a green scrubby or something like that. It's very easy to remove and clean it up, but if you keep it a little bit wiped down with oil, that will keep the whole thing looking perfect. If you're building super premium hilts, your options are to go with aluminum, which doesn't rust and which is strong and looks good, but at the same time it is certainly more lightweight. You don't get that heft, and it is a bit less rugged than steel or iron. So it's kind of a toss-up. Do you want to have to worry about things getting oxidized and rusted, or do you want to have that premium weight and ruggedness? Like, for example, like the switch box up here, this red button, the glass eye, this rabbit ear ring, bulb holder, whatever you want to call it. These parts are aluminum. Then this is, I believe, nickel plated brass up here, and that stuff's never going to rust. Just won't. That's not something that you have to worry about. So it's kind of a toss-up. What's better, you know, something to be rust-free, or to get that extra premium feel and that extra level of durable ruggedness? As far as the saber itself goes, we'll just go ahead and fire it up and show you guys. Chassis is the Solos Hold masterpiece level design. It is done. I did this all in matte black stainless steel, then refinished it to have a nice polished stainless steel look, and then I added some detail elements to make the whole thing pop a bit. These brass piping here and on this side as well, those are added details. The chassis itself used to just have a gap here, and it had the same element, but it was just in plastic, so I just carved it out and put the same element back in, but with brass, because it looks better. You know, why have these in plastic when you could have them in brass? And then to secure everything together, there are holes, and it seemed to me that it made sense for me to use screws there, so I used these flathead screws because they match the whole effect, to screw this board cover in, and then more flathead screws down here and up here and here to hold this cover in. And then there are some Greeble design faux screws up here and here, so I wanted them all to match, because it's not actually a screw, it's just a decorative part of the chassis. And then I think the most fun part about this build, because it's a very simple chassis, the most fun part about it was how to added extra details and elements into it. So for example, the bottom part here had a little cutout, so I figured you obviously want to illuminate behind there. And then they had these cutouts in the metal, but there was no reciprocal cutouts in the plastic part behind it, so I carved that out, and on the other side as well, and just, you know, made the whole thing have a nice backlit red element going on, which is pulsing, which is nice. And then up top, some really fine hexagonal mesh here. This is I didn't use any mesh here, but I did use some diffusing material here and here. And then the more fun part on this side, we've got additional hexagonal mesh, and unfortunately I couldn't illuminate back here because this is the wire channel. So what I wanted to put pixels all behind here, but there just wasn't room to put pixels and all the wiring behind there. But there was room to put pixels here. So I used the 2020 pixels because you can cram like 9 of them in there. So you get a nice clean animation. And that's just doing a color cycle. And then on the bottom I did a color cycle panel, which, as you can see, is really gorgeous. The animation is just smooth as butter. There's 6 sets of 6, so 36 pixels in this little display panel down here, which is essentially almost enough resolution for it to be a small display. I just wanted to keep it simple and give it a really smoothly animated color cycle effect that basically spins all the way around and then repeats. And then another instance of this nice backlit red pulsing Sith backlighting here. Bottom is just capped off with a nice polished stainless steel speaker cover, which is permanently affixed. Then there is a 25mm premium bass speaker inside there. And if you want to open this guy up, just this screw. This top screw here is just for looks. The only screw you have to undo is this bottom one here. Give it a few turns. And you can lift this cover right off to access Profi board, SD card, USB, etc., etc. But you want to be careful because all of the pixels are mounted right to the cover, so you don't want to mess with that any more than you have to, for obvious reasons. You don't want to break any wires or get anything wound up or wrapped around anything else. And then you just simply screw this guy back into place when you're done, and voila. But the whole thing came out really nicely. Nice, smooth, classy, sophisticated looking masterpiece level chassis with a beautiful finish on it and some really good effects. What I opted for was just a heavy strobe when the blade is turned on, with a intense kind of hump flicker, magenta and strobe effect on, classy blade lockup that goes throughout all the different accents here, including the red ones. Because it's a Sith saber, so you know, you figure that's kind of should be kind of intense and evil and, you know, bright, while at the same time as being dark. Crystal chamber. What I did was customized these brass rods that came with the hilt. These were just straight brass rods. So as you can see, I turned them on my lathe and patinaed and weathered them to give them some character, give them some added detail, sophistication, and I think they came out really nicely. I think it's one of the best aspects of the build itself. And they're just simple, custom turned brass rods, nothing crazy going on there, but while they are simple, there's still a really nice effect. They look good and they look the part. As far as the crystal itself, as you guys can see, we've got a really nicely illuminated, silly bright quartz dual crystal in here. Hopefully that's obvious. Maybe in blue it might be more obvious, but it's a double point. So basically, two crystals that grew and merged together, sitting side by side, and I thought that was kind of appropriate for the Starkiller lightsaber because the character started off as a Sith clone, Vader's apprentice or whatever, and then, you know, went his own way and ended up a Jedi. So his character's got a duality to it and a dual nature, so I thought a dual crystal would be kind of appropriate. Now this leads me to my final negative that I want to point out. The only other negative is not about a quality issue, it's about a design issue. The buttons that you guys can see are here, mounted inside the control box, and the only way to, you know, to make this work is to use very, very small brass tactile switches mounted inside here behind that rear brass decorative thing that's going sideways. So that holds the switches in place, and then there's a small gap or conduit or something like that, if you want to call it, to run your wires up from the bottom into the top. But there is nowhere for the wires to come from that area and get up into here and go into here without them coming out. So that's maybe just one oversight in the design, I'm not sure. So, you know, for me, what I did was I cut out a portion of this bottom brass section here, and so that when I inserted and installed it, there was a cutout on the underside and the back for the wires to go sneak through. So the bottom side is fine, you really don't see the wires, and they're in the conduit channel here, so you don't see them here. But at the top, they have to come out and they have to go up into this section, and there's just nowhere for them to go except for to sneak them up and through this top brass piece. So if you look closely, you can actually see 3 wires in there, and it's not a big deal. You know, they look good. They actually look like they're part of the saber, and they look like they're, you know, supposed to be there. But for me, I like to have all my wires hidden to the utmost, you know, to the fullest extent that I can. I don't want to see any wires unless they're decorative wires. So it would have been nice if the wire channel had gone all the way up to here, and then there was a cutout bringing them back in to connect to the blade connector, but whatever. So that's my only other negative as far as the design goes. My only negative as far as the design goes. Other than that, absolutely beautiful design, beautiful quality hilt, and nicest Starkiller hilt I have personally ever seen. As far as how it works, got the main kill switch here, recharge board here, so 1.3mm and high amp kill switch. Cutouts were already part of the chassis design, so that's nice and easy. The threading on this guy is nice because A, it's nicely done, nicely machined, it's nice and easy and smooth. You don't have to worry about it getting cross-threaded and jacked up or, you know, jammed. That's not going to happen with these threads. But also because they didn't over-thread it. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. There's only 3 threads. 3 threads that go along, so you can do 2.5 spins and that's it. It's already on close. Love that. Nice and solid. You don't need to have 25 threads there. And they didn't, which is great. Same with the pommel. Pommel's only got 1 thread or 1.5. And that's still more than enough because that pommel's not going anywhere. But what's cool is that's where your sound vent's from. You got these 5 cutouts down here, which are invisible because they're behind this pommel cover basically. And there is a tiny gap for the sound to come out. So you've got nice sound while at the same time no holes, which is a really nice extra touch because, you know, venting isn't something that a lightsaber actually would have in real life. The only other thing to point out about this is that if you want a little more volume, taking this off actually gives you a bit more volume. So even though you do get sound coming out, it's even better without that cover. And it still looks good. You know, it doesn't look like it's necessarily not meant to look like that. It doesn't look bad to me. And you also get the added benefit of seeing the design in the chassis here. But that's, you know, a personal preference, whether you want to have this pommel cover on or not. And there's still room to turn the volume up on this guy. I think I have the volume set at 2/3 right now, so. No biggie. The next thing to show you guys is the obviously glaring thing that's not Starkiller about this is this big honking point on the front here. Cameron is into lightsabers that have claws. The Raven saber that I did for him had 3 big, huge, like 6 or 7 inch long claws coming straight off the top. So when he asked me to build this for him, he said, "Can you do a custom claw coming off the top where the rabbit ears go?" And I said, "Sure, I can do that. Why not? I mean, that would look pretty good." And, you know, while I'm not personally a big claw design guy, I actually love the way this looks. I think it actually looks better with this nice aggressive claw coming off the top than it does with rabbit ears. But for those of you guys who are purists, to switch the claw over, simply 1 set screw is a 2.5 metric or a T10 Torx and the claw comes right off. Now you just use the same screw right through the rabbit ears. And switch back over to the standard custom look of, you know, your front end of a Graflex rabbit ears instead of the aggressive claw. So that's just an option, whatever seems best. I'm actually going to go ahead and switch it back. It's a good look right there. I like that. We've got some excellent shine through up here in the glass eye. Additional excellent shine through down here on the blade plug. The blade plug is a little bit tricky because of just the design of the hilt. So really the best way to get it out is to just use some forceps or something, needle nose pliers maybe. Something that you can stick in there and grab a hold of the, you know, the plunger and pull it out with. We've got a custom plexiglass diffuse screen, which if you unscrew the glass eye, you can see right through there. The blade connector with pogo pins and neopixels and diffuser. And nice standard 32-inch blade. Blade itself, standard neopixel strips. Nice shine through on all the different areas here. Like I said, 32 inches. Now, this is the first blade of the array. This is Vengeance. The sound font is called, actually, I think it's Vengeance 2. Maybe it's a K-Sith sound font. I'm pretty sure it's a Starkiller sound font. Really good smooth swing. And what I did was just a traditional red blade here. No spark tip, no initial ignition blast. Just a fast moving red blade. Second one is another Vengeance sound font, but it's just called Vengeance. Not by K-Sith. And this one does have a ignition effect. Next up, this is Flourish. And this is a dark orange red color, audio flicker blade. So it's a little bit lighter red and it's a little bit more unstable. Next up we've got Swarm, which is a Vader font. Nope, I lied, it's not Swarm. Alright, so actually I lied again. The previous sound font was Dark. Then this one is Flourish. and the color is dark orange, yellow, and red, double audio flicker blade. Next up, we've got Swarm, which, like I said, is a Vader sound font. And this is kind of a dark orange sunburst color. It's also got a little bit of flicker to it, but it's not an audio flicker blade. It's a little bit unstable looking. Look at the reflection in the monitor to get a true idea of the color. Next up, we've got the custom sound font, actually. And we've got a yellow, white, and blue contrast audio flicker blade. And this sound font I made out of a number of different sound fonts, some old, some new. Next one up is Imperial Knight, and it is a red turbine blade. Love that effect. Then we've got, this is called Durand. I think this is a Lord Blaco sound font, which is a nice sound font for fire blades. So it's got a kind of a background fire effect going on. But this is a heavily modified version of Durand, as you can tell, because it's not a smooth swing font. Now we switch over to the Jedi version of Starkiller. And now we've got a nice bright blue blade. And this is Light Side Attack sound font. Nice, super bright, nicely illuminated blue crystals here. Then we've got another Lord Blaco with a cool white blade. This is called Sigil. But again, heavily modified. It is smooth swing compatible. Then we've got two more. Second to last is Tusken Terminator. This is an Anakin sound font, but it sounds kind of Starkiller-ish as far as the throaty raspiness goes. And then finally, the last one is Camino. Also heavily modified for smooth swing. and back to the beginning. So that is the Solos Hold Starkiller in a nutshell. Cameron, I hope you like it. Let me know what you think. If there's anything you want to change, add, subtract, modify, etc., let me know. But I think it's pretty much perfect. I think it came out really nicely, and I think you're gonna like it. And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching.